Chapter 30. Nightmare Interrupted. Walking down the long hallway of the school now converted into a prison, Jonathan held his chin high as he talked to the strong city's network soldiers walking with him. "Any word from Washington yet?" With a strong Portuguese accent, Rolando replied, "Nothing, sir. I have men working on the tower. Useful parts are hard to find." Unhappy with the response, Jonathan stopped walking and turned to face him. I want that tower up and running by tomorrow. Get it done." "Si, senor." Rolando quickly left to do what he could to speed up the work on the communications tower. Jonathan watched Rolando with a disappointed expression on his face. He quickly walked away before directing his attention to the other strong city's network man to his side. "How about you, Luciano? How is our new guest doing?" "She is still not awakened," Luciano replied, as he hid his disdain for the man standing before him. "Get the nurse." "What's her name?" Jonathan asked, snapping his fingers. "Janet, sir." "Yes, that's it. You have taken a liking to her, haven't you, Luciano?" Luciano looked at Jonathan and wondered just what kind of life created such a strange man. It almost seemed as if he had no understanding of how to interact with others, or he at least struggled to find the right emotions. Not wanting to continue the conversation with Jonathan, Luciano replied, "I think she is taking care of some sick locals locked in the main building. I will have her see what she can do to wake your guest." "That would be very useful. I will be getting things set up for her interview. Let me know when she is awake." Jonathan walked away with a sneering grin on his face. Fighting with all her might, Angelique watched as her hands released the pistols and began to lower back to her sides. With her energy quickly draining, she looked over to Karnik lying bloodied on the ground. Her one thought as everything grew quiet and night began to fall even faster was to get to him. Calling up all her energy, She is starting to come around," Nurse Janet said as she waved a vial of smelling salts under her nose once more. Having a difficult time opening her eyes, Angelique fought through the pain coming from the back of her head. Feeling as if her mind was an old engine struggling to stay running, she fought to focus. Angelique tried raising her hand to her head but was unsuccessful. Confused as to why she couldn't lift her arm, she attempted once again with the same result, only this time she felt something around her wrist. As she looked down and blinked in an attempt to focus her thoughts, the reason she couldn't move became clear. "Can you hear me?" Angelique raised her head in the direction of the kind-sounding voice, only to have a burning pain surge from the back of her skull. "Yes." "I was beginning to worry when you didn't wake right away," Janet said. Remembering that she had been having the nightmare that haunted her dreams, Angelique looked up at Janet. "You could have done it a little sooner." Wishing that she had woken up just after kissing Karnik in the dream. "You probably will not feel the same by the time we are finished talking, Miss Carringer." Angelique's thoughts quickly began to clear at the sound of Jonathan's voice and the events that had put her in her current position. "Jonathan, you don't understand what is going on," Angelique said as she tried to focus on where he stood by the door. With her vision cleared, she could see that she wasn't in a room, but a large building filled with people in what appeared to be cages. "What is this place?" Jonathan looked around, pleased at what he saw. "Don't you recognize it? You are home, back in Rocktown where you left me in a ditch." He became angry at the thought. Jonathan brought his tone under control almost as quickly as he had become angry. "Oh, Angelique, I understand everything, and soon you will too. Take her to the interrogation room," Jonathan ordered as he exited the room. Angelique felt a shiver run through her body as he spoke. Not from the thought of going to an interrogation room, but from her first name coming from Jonathan's lips. Angelique looked up at the nurse who's staring at her. "What is it?" "Angelique?" Nurse Janet spoke as if surprised by the sound. "Yes." Angelique was confused by the expression on the woman's face. "I know it has been almost 20 years, but I was the school nurse when you went to school here. Angelique." Realizing that it wouldn't be good for others to hear her, Janet went around to assess Angelique's injury while they spoke. Luciano stood by the door of the cage, keeping watch over Angelique as Janet attended to her wounds until they came to take her away. "I do remember you, and wish we could have met again under different circumstances," Angelique replied. "Me too." Knowing where Angelique was going to be taken, Janet thought it best to help her think about other things rather than what was to come. While dabbing rubbing alcohol to the cut, the rifle butt left on the back of Angelique's head, she asked, "Whatever happened to that boy you used to date when you went to school here? The one who stabbed himself in the hand with a pencil? You two were inseparable." She was probably asking too many questions at once given their current environment. "Carl?" Angelique asked, with a slight smile on her face, thinking about the last night they spent together before she left to search for her parents. "Yeah. He had a strange German last name. Karner or Karnik, something like that." "Karnik," Angelique said, helping her with his name. At the same time, she noticed the man standing guard straighten, dropping his hands to his sides after hearing the name. "Sergeant Karnik?" Luciano asked, while taking another look around outside the cage. With the nurse applying ointment to her injury, Angelique looked to the guard who was clearly not American, but one of the Strong City's network personnel. Figuring that now was as good a time as any to start refusing questions, she sat quietly as Luciano waited for a reply. "I am Luciano. Maybe he spoke of me." He tried to get Angelique to speak. "I understand your reluctance, but Sergeant Karnik and I had a nice conversation and bad coffee the day all this started." Angelique studied Luciano's body language as he spoke. "They come," Luciano said as he heard the door to the building open. Stepping closer to Angelique to prevent others from hearing, Luciano leaned over. "I owe Karnik, and will pay back my debt." Angelique thought back to the many discussions she and Karnik had, remembering a brief conversation in which he mentioned a captured Strong Cities network man with whom he had spoken. Although so much had happened on that first day that it was hard to put it all together, with that aside, she still had no way of knowing what the man looked like. So Angelique stuck to her belief that when in doubt, say nothing. Hearing boots strike the floor, Angelique could tell there were more than two approaching. Jonathan isn't as dumb as I thought. Angelique's idea of breaking away while being moved quickly disappeared as the 4 guards came into sight. "I'm so sorry," Janet softly said, as she backed away from Angelique as the guards entered. Angelique counted 5 men as they entered, 4 of whom were holding poles. 2 walked over to her left as 2 others went to her right. The 5th guard stood directly in front of her. Angelique watched for any opportunity she could use for escape, but realized quickly that these men knew what they were doing. Showing no signs of fear, Angelique stared deep into the eyes of the guard who stood in front of her, not flinching or blinking when he gave his orders to the others. "Place the nooses." One by one, Angelique felt a noose fall over her head and tighten around her neck until all 4 were secure. "Now I untie you," the guard to her front said with a strong Eastern Europe accent. Leaning over, he placed a handcuff around her left wrist, then snipped the zip tie holding her hand down. Angelique felt the nooses around her neck pull a little tighter as he brought the cuffs over to her right side, securing them around her right wrist. "Yeah, this is going to be difficult," Angelique thought, as the guards continued their work.